Hello. On behalf of CERIC, the Canadian Education and Research Institute for Counseling, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. I'm Sharon Ferris, the Director of Marketing at CERIC, and it is our pleasure to bring you this free webinar with Dr. Suzanne Cook on the Redirection Project, Career Development and Job Shifts for the 50+. We have been so pleased and really overwhelmed by the interest in this project. There are actually 650 of you registered for this webinar, so clearly later life career development is a topic that's resonating. Before I turn you over to Dr. Cook, I would like to take just a few moments to introduce you to CERIC for those of you who may be unfamiliar with us. CERIC is a charitable organization that focuses on education and research in career counseling and career development in Canada. One aspect of our work is that we fund research, such as with this Redirection Project that you're going to be hearing about today. Then we also want to make sure that the research gets into the hands of those who could benefit, so bringing you learning opportunities like today's webinar is a key part of our mandate. CERIC has 3 programs: the Connexus National Career Development Conference, which takes place each year in January, and of course the 2017 edition of Connexus is happening in less than 2 weeks' time. We also have our contactpoint.ca website, which is a free online community for career development professionals, and the Canadian Journal of Career Development, which is also free to access. You can learn more about all of CERIC's work through our website at ceric.ca. Next, a few quick housekeeping notes. After today's webinar, we will send you a copy of the slides, as well as a recording of the session and a brief online survey. And if you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them in the chat box that you see on your screen, and Dr. Cook will respond to as many as she can towards the end of the webinar. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Suzanne Cook. Dr. Cook is a social gerontologist and adjunct professor at York University in the Department of Sociology and York's Center for Aging and Research on Education. She is a leading-edge researcher who studies career development and older workers with a particular focus on second careers. Her research bridges theory, research, and practice. Her recent initiative, the CERIC-funded Redirection Project that she's here to discuss today, examines the diverse later life work experiences of mature workers. I will now turn you over to Dr. Cook.
Welcome everyone to the Redirection Project webinar. It is such a great honor and pleasure to be here today to share some of the details of this amazing study. I have been just so pleased to hear all the enthusiasm and the eagerness, and the number of registrations for this webinar has totally blown me away. So at this moment, I do want to thank so much. I want to thank CERIC for having the vision and seeing the this emerging new trend of later life career and supporting this project. And I hope that we can continue this momentum. It's wonderful to see. So I want to take a moment and just give a little introduction to the project. There we go. So I coined the term redirection to describe later life career, this new emerging stage of later life as working lives are extended. And with redirection, older adults choose new pursuits, new occupation, new direction. And I've been studying redirection for about 10 years. I first started looking at volunteer work, and with this Redirection Project, I'm looking exclusively at paid work as a form of redirection. And I see that this is a new emerging trend. People are working longer, people are extending their working lives, and this is new in our society. So that might be why we have so many people very interested in this topic. I do want to take a moment just to understand the audience, because you know a little bit about me from the introduction that Sharon gave, but I would like to know just a little bit about you. So I do have a couple of polls that I want to invite you to participate in. They relate to your motivation for participating in this webinar, as well as helping me to understand what some of your challenges are of working with older clients. So I'm going to launch that right now and invite you to please respond to these 2 questions. So the first one is, what motivated you to participate in this webinar? Excellent. I see everybody participating. This is wonderful. Just another couple seconds. I'm going to close that question. Okay, I'm going to close that one. I'm going to launch the second question, or do I have to share the results first? Okay, I'm going to share the results first of that one. So most people have signed up for the webinar because of a professional learning opportunity that it represents, so 82%, that's great. 12% said that the majority of their client base is age 50 plus, and then 6% have said that it's of general interest to you to be hearing about work in later life. Okay, I'm going to now share the second poll. And this gets at what you find most challenging about your work with older clients. So thank you for answering this second question. And I see the results coming in. All right, just a couple more seconds. I'm going to close that poll. Okay, so sharing those results with you, 5% are unsure about what's most challenging, how to assist people. 24% employer perceptions are what's challenging. Working through those feelings, and we're going to talk about the feelings today, 20%. Complex circumstances, 47%, the vast majority, and then 4%, the gap between need and government response. Again, thank you so much for participating. It's really great to see where your interests lie. So what I want to do is go to this next slide. There we go. So older adults are working into later life. This is happening currently in society. I'm sure those of you who are working with them see this happening in your work with older clients. More and more of them are seeking assistance. And job change can happen at any age. This is exciting, but it's also very nerve-wracking. It's anxiety-provoking. So it's not a surprise that older adults are seeking advice, support, and guidance, and are frankly looking for services from career professionals. This represents a huge, huge paradigm shift, a huge change in our society. Frankly, social structures have not kept pace with this shift that's happening as people work longer, people are interested in different income options in later life. And so this is a change that's really shaking things up in our society. Before we had the model and where there was retirement. And so now with this shift, people are choosing non-retirement and an expanded working life. They're very interested in being active and engaged. They want to make a contribution. They want to use their skills. They might want to find a place that can use specific skills and specific experience and knowledge. They're very interested in the social aspects that come with working in later life. And some statistics I can share with you just generally about later life work after age 55. If you look at the statistics from Statistics Canada in 2003, 37% of men were in the labor force, and then in 2011 that's increased to 40% are now in the labor force, and it's a more significant shift for women over age 55. From 2003, 23% of women were in the labor force, and now 31% in 2011, 31% were in the labor force. And now that we're in 2017, I expect that this trend is continuing. We do need more data on this, and we're not tracking, to my knowledge, we're not tracking the career shifts among older adults that are embedded within these broader statistics about labor force participation. At the same time that older adults are seeking to work in their later years, we have a stigma and age discrimination that they are facing. And this is part of the story. It is something that we need to spend more time addressing, and it is something that is going to be challenging going forward. So I just wanted to highlight this. This is part of the story, and with Redirection, we are trying to change the narrative and change the way we talk about later life career, help people to understand that it is more common that this shift is happening. Redirection, it does refer to this new emerging stage of later life career. And it is using this new language to describe it, creating a new perspective, a new framing, and really repositioning job shift during this stage of life. And I do have a few publications about this topic, and at the end of the presentation I will refer you to those so that you can read a little bit more about this if you're interested. Essentially, redirection is an alternative to retirement. It is an option, a choice. So that previously adults worked, and then the expectation was that they would retire. So it was a very linear model, a very linear pathway with regard to career. And work was very much tied to retirement. Those two concepts are intertwined. And now, with later life career, we're seeing more people choose redirection. It is a choice, it is a decision, it is basically a fork in the road and an alternative. And it is not for everyone. I need to make the statement that it's not for everyone. Not everyone wants to continue working, but it is a choice for seemingly a growing number of people, and further statistics will indicate that this is the case. And it is a choice about how people want to live and how they want to work in later life. But basically a fork in the road. With redirection, it builds on Donald Super's theory of later life career development, a life space lifespan theory of career development. And just like in that model of career development, there are specific tasks that individuals undertake. And I wanted to just highlight these so that you're aware of the process of redirection. And I'm just going to touch on this very briefly. So individuals are in a place where they're thinking about this, they're thinking about later life and how they want their lifestyle in later life, thinking about work options. And as they anticipate letting go of their full-time work, their current work, they are in this redefinition phase. So there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of anxiety for some people, and it's can be a very emotional phase. And then they move into this discovery stage, which is all about exploration, finding options. And it's a very exciting of trying things, joining things, checking things out, where individuals are very, very actively focused on that discovery. And then once they find their fit, then they move into this renewal phase where the tasks are about redefining their sense of self, reinvention, and there's a lot of energy, a lot of vitality. It's a very exciting phase. And then finally they move into integration, where a new me is created basically in integration. I've been studying this, as I said, for 10 years, and I've actually seen people redirect more than once now, some people, where they talk about how they've done this once and then they do their redirection for some time and are fulfilled and find very rewarding redirections, and then they feel that kind of sense that they're ready for another change, and they go through this again and do another redirection. Okay. So this brings me to the project, the Redirection Project. With this project, there were a couple of objectives. So the first objective pertains to older adults, age 50 and older, focusing in on people who are seeking second or third careers through redirection, or those individuals who have found redirection, and really trying to understand their experiences in detail, how they experience later life paid work and how they experience this transition. And then the second objective is about understanding how career professionals work with older clients in order to develop best practices for working with older adults. This project is really, it's all about career shifts and career extension, and it also has several components. So there's the research component with the surveys. In addition, there's a community development component where I have a great interest in policy and practice, and I'm very much interested in connecting with others who are keen on this topic, and continuing linkages, making connections. So to this end, I'm really excited to connect with people at Connexus. I'll be presenting on Monday the 23rd at, I believe it's at 1:30. And then I'm also presenting in a Career Connections on Tuesday at 2:30, so I'll just give that little plug. And so I'm really looking forward to meeting some of you there and having the opportunity to talk about later life career. And then finally, there's the education component. And this is really critical. I believe I'm an adult educator, and I really believe that creating awareness, drawing more attention to this topic, increasing the recognition of this issue is really important in our society. And so I'm thrilled that there is a very strong educational and awareness component in this project. And I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so the questions pertain specifically to finding out what new occupations people have redirected into to have a better understanding of the diversity of occupations, and again, how career professionals are assisting people. So what models, what approaches, what resources, what tools are people using in their work with older adults. And then for those people who've redirected, understanding their experience, because they are the role models, they're the example, and it's expected that other people can learn from their experience because they are doing it and they've done it, and so people who are seeking work can learn a lot from their experiences, and especially how to put into practice learnings from the Redirection Project for work, practical work with employment seekers. The methodology, it's really important for me to share this as a scholar. So there were 3 national surveys that went out and 3 groups that were invited to participate in the study. So first were those who are seeking work. Individuals in this particular category were either unemployed and seeking work, or they may have been currently working, but knowing that they were looking for that next position, that next opportunity, finding new employment and new work. And so the people who filled out that survey could have been in either one of those two categories. Then the second survey was for people who had already shifted and redirected into second or third careers. So these are the successfully redirected people. And then finally, the third survey was for career professionals who were assisting their older clients to help understand how they're currently working with older clients. And if you want to understand more about the process of the project, then you can visit www.myredirection.com, and that page is there to share all the details of the project. Okay, so I want to share my final question with you. Since we are in real time and I can interact a little bit with this wonderful webinar technology, I'm going to launch another question. So please, I invite you to respond about the approach and models that you're working from currently as you engage with older clients. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this last poll. I'm seeing everybody make a selection. I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds. Some of these approaches might not be familiar to everybody. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and share the results. So narrative is the top choice for an approach or model in your work with older clients. Second selection here, unsure what to use. 32% picked unsure what to use. 40% had picked narrative. Holland's theory of career choice, picked by 11%, closely followed by the happenstance theory, and then finally Super's theory. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for participating in that. And I think my mouse has gone and done something funny there. Thank you. Technical support is just wonderful, I have to say. So I want to share then what career professionals who filled out that third survey indicated. So these are overarching a summary of the results here. And I also want to say that this is preliminary. These sharing the results of the research, it's really preliminary results because I'm in the process of doing a manuscript, an article about this topic. So the career professional said that definitely later life career development is very different from general career development. And so an approach that is specifically tailored to older adults is required. It's something that the field really needs. Furthermore, they indicated that Super's and Holland's models were the ones that they used the most often. This is amongst the people that participated in the survey. And that was followed by the narrative approach. So that's what the career professionals said. And I want to just also add here that I think that those three approaches, Super's, Holland's, and narrative approach, are complementary. So that gives the possibility of a really wonderful foundation for with the Redirection Project, making some very great suggestions about best practices going forward with older adults and work with these clients as they embark on career shifts. I want to also highlight the differences between the two groups of participants, the redirected workers and those who were seeking redirection, because it's really important that we understand the redirected individuals and their experience in order to understand how to better support people who are seeking redirection. So with regard to the seekers in this first column, there were a lot of strong emotions. There's a lot of anxiety, uncertainty, even fear in some of the responses. These were predominantly, this was a very open-ended qualitative study. So individuals did talk about the great difficulty of making a career change. So this psychological, it is a psychological or emotional transition. They did also talk about needing supports and services. They had found supports and services. Other people were looking for some different supports and services, needing more supports and services. And they also mentioned that they needed a career pathway. They felt like they were really uncertain, not really sure what direction to go in. They needed to have some kind of reassurance. And I think redirection represents that, provides people with the comfort really that other people have done this before. The redirection is your pathway, and it is reassuring for people to know that they are on a career trajectory, and this is what it looks like, this is what they can expect. Some individuals in the seeking category were continuing to learn. They were engaged in lifelong learning. They were obtaining credentials. They were engaged in formal education and learning new things in order to make that change into a new career. In some of the comments that they made in regard to that, they were very hopeful that obtaining these credentials would help them to make a career shift. And they also mentioned the benefits of work, so what they hope to gain from their new work options, their new work opportunities. They were excited about the opportunity as well as anxious, and they were hoping that it would be really rewarding once they had made that change. And finally, they mentioned employers' role and the need for employers to understand the value of older workers, for employers to hire older and be more in tune with what older workers can offer. The redirected individuals, they talked about having overcome obstacles and struggles and challenges, which was good to hear from my perspective because of some of that emotional work that the seekers had to go through. Some of it was due to significant obstacles in their path. So it was nice to hear that these redirected workers had overcome and faced struggles and barriers. They did talk about the income generation, the income that was coming from their new work. In some cases, they were engaged in part-time work. In other cases, they were working for minimum wage. So this is some of the data that I want to delve into a little bit more detail to understand better the financial circumstances of the redirected individuals. These redirected individuals also made a lot of suggestions for others following in their footsteps. And so they did have a lot to say, to suggest, and they talked about a few things and I'm going to share a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. So wait for the information about suggestions and attitudes and methods. But I want to state that these individuals are role models for others wanting to embark on this as well. With regard to the diversity of work that people have found through redirection, it definitely was diverse, right? Everybody's unique, everybody's an individual, so what satisfies one person, what meets the needs of one person is going to be completely different for another person. So just to give you an overview, beyond it being very different and unique, everybody's redirection, it fell into broad categories, so education, healthcare, retail and sales, the food industry, just a whole variety, self-employment and consulting. So just a really wide variety of different things that people have found. So that was really nice in the data to have a better understanding of where people are working. The circumstances I want to touch on, the individuals who've redirected, some of them have done it for personal satisfaction, for very personal reasons, because it's rewarding and fulfilling and it's a form of enjoyment. And they get a lot from their work. It might be related to interests and passions and hobbies. Other individuals indicated that they were working for financial reasons. They needed the income, they needed the money. They had a mortgage to carry, they were in debt, and they definitely needed to work. So it wasn't about wanting to, it was about needing to work. So this, getting back to the attitudes and the methods, I want to share that the people who redirected, they were very satisfied. It was gratifying to see that after this transition, they were happy with the new work options, the new work opportunities. They talked about being optimistic and confident. They talked about being positive, and that this draws people to you. This helps to create opportunity, opens up opportunity, and helps you to meet your goals. So I felt that touching on attitudes as secrets to success is really important for people working with older adults to know and to hear. They talked about the need to network, and I know people when you work with older clients, it's probably one of the topics that you cover. But they felt it was really important to put yourself out there and to network and to get out there and to tell people that you're looking for work. And they also talked about the supports that they had in their life, and that included the career professionals who were supporting them, but also family and friends, and that this was really important during this transition because it helps you to get through the transition. You need supports, whether those are professional supports or whether those are family and friends, informal supports to help you get through this transition process. Because the other thing that they said was that it takes time. It can take a lot longer than you think it's going to take. And so it's important to recognize that it's going to take time and to be patient. They said, be patient, it does take time, and I think to expect that it's going to take longer than I think it will for this journey. So this gets me back to the macro perspective, because I think it's important to touch on this is why I think this trend is happening, why redirection is happening. So stepping back and taking that macro perspective. With this new trend, this emerging trend towards later life career shift, I think it's partly due to changes happening in our society. People are living longer and interested in having some kind of income option in their later years. So it's demographic, right? This is a demographic shift. In fact, one respondent said that at age 87, they were finally going to retire from working life. So they were ready at age 87 to retire. And we also are seeing with the uncertainty in the economy and the changing nature of work, I think more people want to just have that reassurance to be making money longer than they might have originally anticipated previously in life. So I do think that going forward, more and more people will be thinking about this. This is going to be a trend that remains with us. Organizationally, at the organizational level, organizations who are leading edge are interested in retaining their older workers. They're doing things to hire and retrain older workers because they see that older workers, they value them, they see that they bring skills, experience, and knowledge. Other companies, managers and human resources staff haven't yet recognized this, and they might not be providing training and development to the older workers and helping them with their career development inside the organization. So it's not really a surprise that some of these older individuals are kind of looking around and thinking, you know what, I think I am ready for a change. I do want to shift careers. At the community level, I think older adults see that they have more to contribute. They see that they can make a difference in some regard, and they want to do that. They want to be active and engaged, and they want to contribute to the community and make that difference. And then at the individual level, there are a lot of benefits that are derived from work. If you enjoy your work, if you're not in a toxic work environment, then just walking into the workplace provides so much that we're just really beginning to recognize beyond the paycheck. So that includes things like the social interaction, which is huge. People want to be socially active. They want to be connected to coworkers and to clients. People want the mental stimulation. People are interested in having purpose and having structure. So there's so many different benefits to work that we really need to recognize and acknowledge, and so it's no wonder that people want to work longer, because people get a lot from work. I want to talk now about practice and spend some time helping to put this into perspective so that you can work practically with your clients. I think that when a client finds that new career, it feels really good to have been part of that process. So I think that as a career professional, it's very rewarding and very positive to see people who have achieved redirection. However, at the beginning of this process, there is trepidation, there is anxiety and uncertainty. And that's important to recognize, that as people start this process, it's really critical to spend the time and help them to work through those emotions. But also to help them to see that there is something that comes next. There is possibility, there is opportunity. They can identify in their skills, their knowledge, their experience. They can find what comes next for them. That with working through those emotions, that comes also hand in hand with thinking about attitudes, so about beliefs and confidence and that positive energy, because attitude is really contagious. Believing that something comes next is really important because it helps the client to believe that something comes next and that they have something to contribute, that they have a role in society, something to offer, and that if they need to, they can obtain credentials or they can reskill and retrain to help them become more valuable in the workplace. I mentioned educational tools and resources that can help and work with clients, and so the documentary film that we created for Redirection, it's called Redirection, Movers, Shakers, and Shifters. This is going to be a really important tool and resource for your work with clients. And I'm showing this film at Connexus on January 23rd. And with this film, there is an accompanying guidebook that helps you to use this as a tool or resource in your work. And this is very exciting. I'm thrilled with this film that shows 5 individuals and their redirection, some of the obstacles and challenges that they faced. And so these individuals are role models. The film provides ideas and insights, and it provides hope and inspiration for people who are seeking work. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you to find out how you envision using this in your work with clients. With the project and this incredible database of experiences of people who have been seeking work or have redirected, I'm in the process of creating a typology, and I'll be publishing this. But I want to just give you a little taste of how it's developing, and I'll be talking more about this at Connexus. And I want to draw your attention to the people on the right-hand side of this model, this typology that I'm developing. So there are those who are striving to redirect. These are the ones that are kind of thinking about it. They haven't embarked on this in a serious way yet. The individuals who are seekers are those who are currently looking. They are unemployed and looking and wanting to find a new work opportunities, new work options. And then in the bottom, that last group are stuck and SASFU, which is it's an acronym basically representing all the emotion and uncertainty and difficulty, frustration, and maybe even some anger. And I think with this group, I've not only captured the people who desperately need help, but I've also may have captured people that are on the cusp of giving up and leaving the workforce, leaving workforce participation because they are feeling very hopeless. It's definitely something that I'm working on and need to spend more time on. But it is something that I think society needs to be aware of, because it is basically the data represents this snapshot of people's experiences, and I suspect that I have uncovered people that are in that crisis of deciding whether or not they are just giving up, and also those people who need help, very much need help and support and services in order not to stay stuck or not to just completely give up. This brings me to a revisiting of those 4 tasks that I mentioned earlier in that circle of the process of redirection, and just acknowledging that probably clients will come to you in that redefinition and the discovery and exploration tasks. So just to be aware of that, to help you work through the process of the transition, to know that that's where they're coming to you, seeking assistance. And then this acronym stands for confident, network, positive, patient, and supports. So thinking through the pieces and putting those into place in your work with clients to go over these, and this is based on the experiences of people who've redirected. It's basically from their advice, their comments of what's needed in order to be successful in redirection. And again, from those who have redirected, the advice that they seem to be sending is that if you want to be active and engaged in later life, then keep moving. Use it or lose it. Keep going. Set up goals and objectives, set new occupational and work goals, and just do it. So they said things like, don't wait. If there's something you always thought about doing, don't wait. It's been great to get back to work, although the change was difficult at first. It has been well worth it. So these are the types of comments that they shared. Again, don't wait to redirect. And this goes with just embracing change. Life's about change. And so embrace it, figure out what your options are, and then start moving forward, investigate them, explore them, and then find out what your redirection is and just embrace it. And as I said before, I think that going forward, redirection will become more common. It will become anticipated. It will be planned for. It will be expected in the future. And so we need to put things in place to help people. We need to celebrate this. We need to create more awareness and educate people, enlighten people. Here are some resources that I believe will help you with this. The first link is to my personal profile, where I have some of the articles that I've written available for you to look at and read if you want to read more about my research. The second link is directly to the Redirection trailer, which some of you might have already seen. And to reassure you that the film will be shared online following Connexus. It will be available online, and the companion guide will also be available online to assist you in your work. And the guide explains my recommendations for how to use the film in your work with clients. So this is very exciting. And then because the age discrimination, the ageism, is a concern. We are trying to get past that and recognize the value of older workers and what they bring. If you have a client that's struggling with this, then I recommend you share the power of oldness with your clients. All right, so again, I want to thank CERIC so much for supporting this project, and I want to thank all of you for participating. I'm really gratified to see your interest and your attention, how eager and keen you are to learn more about the project and the research findings. I really do appreciate your interest in this topic, and I look forward to meeting some of you at Connexus or at further opportunities to strengthen the linkages between those of you who are really interested in this topic and really passionate about this topic. I believe that we have time for questions, and I believe we have possibly some questions coming in. If you do want to make a specific comment on what you value about the research, what you value about using this in your work with your clients, I would really love to hear that. I look forward to connecting and to hearing your thoughts on this project.
Okay, Suzanne, thank you very much. It's Sharon back on the line from CERIC. We do have lots of questions and comments, and we will try to get through as many as we can. And the ones that we don't get through, we will share them with Dr. Cook, and she can follow up with you directly. So, Suzanne, one of the early comments we had was just a clarification, or question we had was just a clarification around what age group are you talking about when you say older workers? We know 50 plus, but what's the range that we're focusing on?
With this particular, with this project, they want to know what the age range is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the individuals who participated ranged from age 50 all the way to people in their 80s. And so, but there was a broad age range of individuals who participated in the survey, in the different surveys. But I also just want to mention that the oldest individual that I'm aware of who is working is 104 years of age.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite the
wow.
range.
Yeah. That person didn't fill out my survey. I'm just aware of that from my connection to other scholars who are interested in this topic. So I don't think we should be concerned about age. I think we should be more concerned about what comes next, what pursuit, what's the new direction.
All right, and a couple of comments around the idea that for many of the clients that the career practitioners are seeing, that work is in fact not a choice. So here's a sample comment. Many have not planned their retirement and find themselves without income to meet needs or their health changes, and those come in later life. So rather, it is not a choice, and it is not an easy shift if forced by the need for income and the inability to meet the demands of past employment. These are the clients that I'm seeing more of.
So sorry, was there a question? I must have missed the question.
Just a comment, several comments around
Okay.
that they find that work is not so much of a choice. It's financial demands, and it's complicated by health issues, or they're losing their employment, and that's what's forcing the change.
Yes, definitely. That was also in the survey results, that there are people who are needing to work for financial reasons. The process of finding work can be complicated. And age and health certainly do add to this. It adds another layer to this.
And a related question, somebody wanted to know if an older worker was let go and it wasn't self-initiated, would that be considered a redirection, or is a redirection only when it's initiated yourself?
So that's a great question, and individuals who filled out the survey did indicate in some cases that they had been downsized or laid off, and that was kind of the start of their process of finding their redirection. It was the beginning of their transition. So yes, certainly it's can be by choice that people realize that they are redirecting, but it can be the case where people are kind of pushed into redirection because of circumstances around the organization and downsizing.
And somebody wanted to just know what the sample sizes were for the surveys.
Wonderful, and I neglected to mention, so there were, with all three surveys combined, there were just under 300 responses.
Okay. And a few questions as well related back to the theories and the models that you had shown, and you had a poll question around that, and several comments that people actually used a combination of theories, that they thought that you needed a variety and that they liked to take a more flexible approach. And
Yes.
then one individual wanted to know if you were familiar with the hope-centered career development model that Dr. Norman Amundsen is affiliated with, and if that was something that you considered highly applicable to this group.
I have heard of it, but I haven't been focusing on that model. It wasn't something that came through strongly in the survey, but I can certainly, I do believe that being flexible is very important, because depending on the circumstances of your clients, you might find that some kind of integrated model is required, similar to what Charles Chen recommends, having an integrated model of career development. So I could certainly see using that model along with other models in your work with clients.
And somebody wants to know if in your research you found that there was an attitude of resentment among younger staff towards older workers.
I don't believe that that came through in the survey. I have heard anecdotally about that, but I haven't seen it in the research. So it's maybe worth something looking at in the future. I do prefer to look at strengthening intergenerational connections in the workplace and in society. So I would probably reframe it and look at the opposite, looking at ways to strengthen the intergenerational connections rather than focusing on conflict.
And here's a question slash comment. Someone said that they think it's important to make clients aware of the costs associated with the training and development that might be required for redirection. And some of these costs can be substantial, and also it could be a considerable length of time to complete the training. Was that something that came up in your research among those who are redirecting?
I did. I think, if I understand the question correctly, that there's a concern over the cost that might be involved in obtaining educational credentials to make the job shift. Yes, exactly, that certainly can be a factor. And to go back and get further credentials can take time. So that can be a barrier to redirection. I'm assuming that they're talking about at the individual level. So that was something that was mentioned as a comment. And again, the individuals who have redirected said that they were very satisfied, very rewarded once they'd gone through that process, but that you need to be patient because it does take time.
All right, and another question here from somebody who wanted to know where they should go to get statistics that support building a case for the need to create programs for mature adults to engage in the labor market. For example, to find out how many people over 50 are looking for work, how many people who are on social assistance are over 50, etc.
So we do have some statistics from Statistics Canada that look at labor force participation. In other countries like the UK and the US, they are tracking, and even Australia, they are tracking some of these statistics. And I think that we need to look more at the details to understand the nuances and the complexities of this issue more. So that's why the Redirection Project is so exciting and so important. It is not it's not a random sample. It's a qualitative study so that it connects specifically to people who are either looking for work, have redirected, and then the career professionals who are assisting their older clients. So it's not like a Statistics Canada study. So basically, we need more research to look at this to obtain the answers that that individual is inquiring about, in a nutshell.
All right, terrific. Maybe time for one more question, and there are a lot that unfortunately we won't get to. Someone wants to know, among the people that were involved in your study, what percentage sought redirection immediately following retirement versus those who waited some period of time before deciding?
I am not able to answer that at this time. I don't know the number of months, for example, that it took for people to make the transition, but that is something that, and that's a comment I wanted to make. I don't know how quickly people did redirect, like with regard to the number of months or the number of years, and I don't know. What I'd like to know is how this can save people time and or money, right? How can we save people time or money with the redirection? That's something I think that I'd like to explore more in the future.
All right, and with that, we are at our time, so I will thank you very much. Dr. Cook, was there anything you wanted to say to wrap up?
I think that covers it. I just want to thank everybody again for participating and for their interest and eagerness to learn more. And again, I look forward to seeing everybody. It's going to be very exciting to present this in more detail at Connexus.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your research today. Clearly a huge interest in this topic of later life career development. And as mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will email you this afternoon a recording of the webinar along with a copy of the slides, and we'll also send you a brief evaluation form, and we do value your feedback. And finally, as Dr. Cook indicated, her Redirection Movers, Shakers, and Shifters documentary will be posted online for free at the end of this month after its launch at the Connexus conference. And you can access this as well as other project updates at CERIC.ca/redirection. So thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.